Joey Aguilar's growth from the first day of fall camp all the way through the second scrimmage gave Josh Heupel and company enough confidence to name him the starter for Tennessee football leading into the first game of the season against Syracuse. After we heard Josh Heupel, kind of go through this mock week with us, it became clear, really why that decision came about and why he felt it was important to name him the starter, about 2 weeks out from the start of the regular season, of which I kind of thought they were going to follow the Michigan model and maybe wait until game week. But naming him now, really puts a lot of confidence under Joey Aguilar to operate in the way that you would as a starting quarterback. And especially with the injuries on offense, those reps that you would get with those healthy number ones become even more important. So there's no more time to maybe split those reps and continue to entertain a competition in the quarterback room. But even though this decision was made, and it's great news for Joey Aguilar, that doesn't mean that there wasn't disappointment and heartache still in that quarterback room. Heupel said that he made the announcement to all three quarterbacks, and the disappointment that he saw is you want that because you go into this competition really believing and performing that the starting job could be yours, and you put in all of this work to give yourself the best chance, and then it just doesn't work out. So being disappointed that you're not named the game one starter and you're not the guy who's going to get the start to start the regular season does come with disappointment. And as Josh Heupel kind of goes back to when he was at Oklahoma and he was in that quarterback competition, or he had the quarterback competition with Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton, he understands how that process goes and maybe why it was more important to name that starting quarterback a little bit earlier than waiting until that first game week because of how important those reps are with those starting running backs, tight ends, and wide receivers. But it all comes down to the growth that you've seen from the first day till now. And in that small sample size, Joey Aguilar has shown the most growth, whether in his command of the offense, going down to his decision making, his accuracy, his consistency, his comfortability. And if you can take that sample size and you can stretch it out over 15 or so weeks, they look at it and they say analytically, probably okay, looking at what we've seen through the first couple of weeks, if that trend continues over the next 12 to 15 weeks, Joey's absolutely the guy. But that doesn't mean that the competition in the background doesn't continue, right? Joey's going to have to continue to reprove it every week that he does give the Volunteers the best chance to win on Saturdays. And if he struggles in these games, Jake Merklinger, George McIntyre, they're going to have that opportunity. Right, how does that competition go? And who will Tennessee look to if Joey struggles in these games to be the guy that they insert 10? I know we've talked, a couple of episodes I think ago at this point. You could look to the Alabama scenario where it was Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts and the one quarterback struggling, they insert the other one, or even injury here with Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker, and who that next guy that you go to bring in to replace that player, and then do they ever give it back, right? You can go to Tom Brady, Joe Bledsoe. There are so many scenarios where just because you have this guy as your starter doesn't mean he ends it. You hope that he does, and you hope the sample size that they've seen up until this point allows him to be the guy who finishes the season. And, as we mentioned, Joey Aguilar pretty much is playing with, house money, right? You come here, you had already won, you're becoming a part of a program that you want to be in, and there's so much upside by bringing in a guy like Joey Aguilar. So I think, again, it's still the right move, and everything that we kind of have been saying up until this point kind of confirmed today as to why Joey really is that guy. And I think when you look into the wide receiver room and maybe the question marks that still remain there, they say Chris Brazzell's been, part of the team the last couple of days. Mike Matthews was only limited a couple of times, and Braylon Staley was with them as well. You get to Amari Jefferson, though. I know we've talked a little bit about him being that unknown commodity because he had that hip surgery. He came in injured, and what has he done since then? Josh Heupel had a lot of high praise for Amari Jefferson and potentially the role that he could have this season, being somebody else that they incorporate. Otherwise, it's a really young wide receiver room. And again, coming off of that hip injury, Josh Heupel says he's done a great job over the course of the summer, dramatically changing his body, and he's out there making plays. And he says he expects him to have this continued growth, through the rest of fall camp into the regular season. So I do believe when you look to those younger wide receivers, Amari Jefferson will be, kind of one of those key players behind the three wide receivers that we just mentioned. So, of course, top of mind, the quarterback competition. Joey Aguilar is the right move. I still think, there's a lot of question marks that will happen around Jake Merklinger and what his future holds because, as we mentioned previously, I do think the future is with George McIntyre, and for them, their role is just to continue to compete with each other, be good teammates, have good energy, have great focus. So if your time does come, you'll be ready. Just as Jake Merklinger said during the spring, you got to prepare like you are the starter so you can be prepared for those opportunities. But yeah, we're just 13 or some odd days out from the start of the regular season. We'll have so much more coming up on the channel, and a few more announcements coming up later this week for a couple of pregame shows. Hopefully we will have on the channel starting next week. I'll talk to you guys then.